I'm going to shake a little bit while I talk. I hope that's all right with everybody. If you need to shake a little bit, if you're cold, stand up. Anyway, I'm going to say a few things different than I did yesterday, but I'm going to begin with the strongest connection between co-ops and unions that occurred in the past in American history, which was the Knights of Labor between 1885 and 1888. The Knights of Labor were the first union that defeated a major corporation in a strike struggle. In 1885, they defeated the Union Pacific Railroad and won widespread admiration in the working class for that victory. They also, one of the main beliefs of the Knights of Labor was vote as you strike as you vote, and build the cooperative commonwealth. So the Knights of Labor built over 330 large and good, well-functioning co-ops around the country in mining, iron manufacture, plumbing, pipe fitting, agricultural pursuits. Yet in 3 years, after the strike of 1885, the employing classes began to see that the Knights of Labor were not a neutral self-help organization, but actually an organization that was helping the working class maybe push back against the robber barons of the late 1800s. And so they began a systematic attack on the co-ops of the Knights of Labor. And one of the things that the Knights of Labor had not anticipated was that the robber barons of the day would actually try and crush their co-ops. They just thought, oh, we are going to build these wonderful co-ops and they're going to survive and prosper and outgrow the power of big business. Well, big business took a sledgehammer to them, and by 1888, almost all the co-ops of the Knights of Labor had been crushed directly through boycotts, monopolizations, railroads refusing to haul products. Believe it or not, the railroads actually deserve the title of kind of the scumbags of the 1880s and 1890s, even though I'm a big railroad fan myself. Gotta admit that. So anyway, the Knights of Labor lost and disappeared, and the AFL at that time, the antecedent of the modern day AFL, their attitude was that co-ops were a delusion, an illusion, and a distraction from the workers' struggle to win better conditions and wages from the actually existing corporate America. And they felt like the cooperative commonwealth was a dream that couldn't come true. Well, we believe that the strike struggles down through the years and the direction of organized labor to win better wages and conditions actually proves one side of their thesis, but it has been disproved in the modern era as unions would win good contracts and then their companies would just leave and go elsewhere. So all of a sudden, the equation is back on the side of the Knights of Labor. But both were wrong in a sense, because the Knights of Labor, even though they said vote as you strike and strike as you vote, did not pay enough attention to politics. In modern day corporate capitalism in the United States is not a fair and even-handed free market. There's thousands of ways and laws that allow big business to benefit from the economy in ways that are basically what we would call unfair and unbalanced. And if there's ever a time in our history, the grandiose schemes of Wall Street that ended up in the crash of 2007 is a great illustration of that. So the co-op movement has got to be involved in intelligent ways in politics. You can't just be involved in peacefully off to the side building co-ops, because if we are actually successful and threaten the powers that be, the 1%, they will come after us. And if we're not prepared politically and also organizationally in the strike struggle, we'll be swept away just like the Knights of Labor were swept away. Now, the other thing I want to talk about a little bit, and you have to forgive the shaking a little bit. It's part of me. I think pretty clearly I was exposed to some pretty heavy chemicals at work, and that's the end result of being a railroad mechanic for 32 years during the era where a lot of hazardous chemicals were not talked about with the workers. So just every time you think about me shaking, think about that. And the other thing that I want you to think about is the great unknown in American political concepts, and that's the concept of class. In the last election, everybody talked about middle class, but that's a big mushy conception. We in the labor movement know that there is a working class, that the union movement is based on the working class, and the working class are people that have to sell their labor on the market in exchange for their living and basically have no control over production. Now, the concept of middle class includes another class, usually, and that's the small business and supervisory class, which we also know is the second most numerous and probably ideologically most important class in American history, and that's the class of self-employed small owners and small business and supervisory people. Those are the people that many of us in the working class aspire to become someday. And in a sense, the union co-op movement is an attempt to amalgamate the best ideas of both those classes into one group of people, worker owners. But both classes by themselves have weaknesses. The working class has a weakness in terms of populism. And some people say, well, populism was a good thing. Well, there's some kinds of populism that led to some good things. But it's kind of like populism is unscientific class anger, sometimes misdirected. In 2010, the right wing of the Republican Party mobilized white right-wing populism to vote a bunch of reactionaries into the House of Representatives who actually represent a small group of the American people. But it was that class injury feeling and white racism combined that won that vote. Well, one of the things that the union co-op model demands of the working class is more science, because if we're going to run our own businesses, we have to understand things in a scientific way instead of an angry, emotional way. An angry emotion, a reaction to our oppression, our layoffs, the foolish ways we've been treated, and incredible debacles like the 2007 banking crisis, where the 1% so obviously stole from millions of us and got away with it without being put in jail. And they're all still out there. The biggest bank robbers in American history are still free. And they're not Jesse James, and they're not anybody else. They're Jamie Dimon and his crew. So some of the weaknesses of the small business and supervisory class historically has been a total lack of understanding of solidarity and a total attachment to individualism and me-firstism. So both classes, if they're coming together in the worker co-op model, have to give up one side of the equation. Small business and supervisory class people are usually better educated because of opportunities, sometimes very knowledgeable about the way businesses work, but have no knowledge of solidarity. And sometimes workers have no knowledge of the way businesses work, but have great knowledge about solidarity. So those two things are really important. And I would submit that the small business and supervisory class has more to learn, because solidarity is a lot harder to learn. But it is really important. It is really important for working people to abandon sort of emotional populism and get down to scientific thinking and really base themselves on correct business principles so these co-ops function instead of are based on emotionalism. We hate runaway shops, therefore let's build a business. We can't win a long-term struggle for the economy based upon our anger about being screwed. So that's my last thought for you.